So basically, everything I owned, which wasn't very much anyways, but everything was gone. And they didn't find the trailer for a couple of years. And of course, it didn't have anything in it.
Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Dylan Collier. I'm a physical therapist and welcome to the New Medical Nomads podcast, where I get to document my journey as a medical traveler, as well as interview other experts within the traveling field. Now, the rules for the traveling game are constantly changing, so anything you hear on this show should be for entertainment purposes only. This is not legal, financial, or medical advice. Enjoy the show and safe travels. Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the New Medical Nomads podcast. And this episode is going to be the after hours episode. It is about 8 to 9 p.m. right now, a little dark outside, and so the lighting is a little dim. But I am here with Dr. Kelli Berg, a physical therapist that I met at a event hosted not too long ago. And she was sitting at a table, and we kind of sat down and ate together, and we bonded over telling one of the other attendees how it was growing up in a small town. She was from Chicago. We were both from very rural areas. But that is how we met, found out she was a traveler, and kind of just maintained connection after that. So, Kelli, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on here, Dylan.
Hey, no problem. So, Kelli, can you tell us a little bit about kind of where you came from, where you're from, where the process was for school, how'd you get into traveling therapy, and where you're kind of headed from this point?
Yes, absolutely. So I grew up in a very small town, like you said, in Kansas. And I ended up going to physical therapy school at Wichita State University. And then I had heard about travel PT right when I started school. And I actually wondered if it was a real career. So I became curious. I started searching the internet, and there wasn't a whole lot on the internet about travel PT at that point. But then I went to a couple events. There were big physical therapy conventions called CSM. And I met some recruiters there from medical staffing companies. And that's when I started to get a lot more interested in it. I realized that it was an actual career. And then it's just, started talking to recruiters through phone calls and emails. And sooner or later, I knew that that was the route I wanted to take.
So you were kind of coming out of school, went to CSM, found out that traveling was an actual career. How long have you been traveling?
Just over 4 years.
Wow. So 4 years worth. Were you doing the traditional 3 months at each place, or did you stick around at certain areas? Or can you kind of describe your 4-year career so far?
Yeah. So I've done just a little bit of both. I'm on my 12th contract right now, and I'll finish that up here in another month. And I have worked anywhere from 8 weeks at a place to up to 5 months. And I started out in Oklahoma. I went on to Arizona, then Idaho, Colorado, Wyoming, North Carolina, and Vermont. And within all those jobs, I ended up doing 3 jobs in Arizona and 3 in Idaho.
Okay. Did you tend to stick around big cities, or were you kind of more rural, or was it a mix of both?
A little bit of a mix of both.
Okay.
I tend to tell the recruiters that I like to be close to a big city, but not in the big city, so on the outskirts. Okay. And I've actually really enjoyed the small towns. Those have been some of my best jobs.
Really? That's funny.
Yeah.
Because I know when we first met, we were kind of talking about how, coming from a small town, you just wanted to get out and explore and see other things. And I know you were from a town where you had more cows than people.
Yes, absolutely. Not hard for a lot of people to fathom that, but it is true. It's fun to experience the cities, but when it comes down to it, it makes you appreciate where you're from, and having so many supportive people in your life in a small town is it's really amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I was from a bigger small town, so a small little river town in southern Missouri. But we had a population, I think the sign says around 7,000 inside of it. But yeah, much different in the city.
Yeah, nice. So you probably had a Walmart.
Yes, we do have a Walmart. That was when I was talking with Dr. Jody James. She's located right now in Ohio, and said that they do have a Walmart there. It's one of the milestones to become a town or a village.
I remember when we got a McDonald's. I think I might have been in high school at the time, and it was 30 miles away. So that was a big thing then.
Did you go to it on opening day?
Oh, I don't think so. But we made special trips just to go to McDonald's.
So, Dr. Berg, Kelli, now that you're about 4 years into this whole traveling gig, what's something that you wish you would have known starting out versus what you know now?
I wish I would have known that it always works out. So there's so many variables with travel PT, whether it is, like the jobs come and go super fast. You have to make decisions about a job after your interview, usually within 24 to 48 hours. So it can be like very emotional, a lot of ups and downs, and your contract could possibly get canceled. But one of the contracts that I took that got canceled before I even got there was actually a blessing, because then I ended up at another contract that was probably one of my favorites along the way. So, just trusting in the process and knowing that it's going to work out is such a hard thing to do. Being patient like that is one of the hardest things. And, it's always worked out for the best. And I've had some really amazing experiences, but it didn't always come with no stress at all.
Can you first, can you kind of go into how your housing situation was? Did you go through the company's housing? Did you go off on your own with the stipends? And then also, can you go into some of those stressful situations that you've kind of experienced throughout your journey?
Sure. So as far as the housing, I have never taken the company housing. I've always found housing on my own. And I decided to do that just because it's pretty expensive to have the travel company find your housing for you. And I found that with the internet now and using apartment searches, Craigslist, Airbnb, or, I've even had some friends in the areas that I went to that actually works out pretty well. And as far as some of the stressful situations that I've had, I did have an incident that was kind of a milestone, I guess. The day after I finished my first contract, my dad came to help me load up all my belongings in my apartment. And we had parked the trailer at a Walmart parking lot, and we were going to go do some things throughout the day, and came back and the trailer was gone. So basically everything I owned, which wasn't very much anyways, but everything was gone. And they didn't find the trailer for a couple of years. And of course, by then it didn't have anything in it. So that was definitely something that was pretty challenging. It makes you take a step back and think, about your path and if you're on the right path. And, I actually learned valuable lessons from that, but I didn't really realize it till later on. And now I'm such a minimalist, and I just don't buy a lot of stuff, and I am completely happy with that. And I don't think I realized like having all this stuff, which was just kind of like weighing me down. So it made me realize like a whole other side of ways to live.
That's a crazy story. Oh my goodness.
It's just pretty scary.
Yeah. When you were finding places to stay, I've heard of some people kind of only staying in like gated apartments and things like that, making sure that they're really secure and safe. Which route did you take? I know you mentioned some friends, but outside of the friends that you stayed with, what were some of the criteria that you would use to stay at a place?
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say there's any like specific criteria, but generally I looked for it to be in somewhat of a nice area, because I travel alone, and so I like to make sure that I feel safe. So having a gated community is a plus, but I've also been in a lot of areas where it has been pretty safe, and I don't feel like that area has to be gated to feel safe. I've also actually stayed in a couple hotels temporarily. It wasn't my first choice, but it's what had to happen. So sometimes it's actually pretty hard to find housing, and a hotel is the only route that I found.
Have you had to stay an entire rotation at a hotel, or is it kind of just a stopping point so that you can't find a place?
So there was one job that I stayed at a hotel for about 2 months and then found another place. Yeah. And the most recent job I had, I was actually in the hotel for 3 months.
Okay.
It was more of an apartment style hotel, and I actually felt spoiled because you had breakfast every day of the week. There was supper 3 nights a week, so it was pretty nice. It was actually kind of hard to leave there.
Kind of goes to show that with traveling, sometimes the bummers actually turn into a pretty good gig.
Absolutely, yeah. If you just ride it out, yeah, you can have some really great experiences.
Kelli, I noticed you said supper instead of dinner. Where you're from, what do they call lunch dinner?
Yes, you have breakfast, and then 12 o'clock is dinner, or lunch, and then 6 o'clock is supper. Yep. And I've got made fun of many times on my traveling adventures.
When I moved up to St. Louis for school, nobody understood that, and it was
really?
Like specifically just I think from the small town that I was from. Yeah, I was so confused when people wanted to go out to dinner and things like that. I was like, well, lunch is dinner and dinner is supper. And then my roommate, he pointed out that he kind of just blew me off, thought I was making it up. But there's actually a Eminem song out there, that a lyric that goes like that. We call lunch dinner, dinner supper. He's like, oh, yep, I'll have to send it to you.
Oh, please do. That would be awesome. I actually had an incident one time with my roommate in college, and I said, hey, do you want to go get some dinner? And she's like, I'm kind of hungry now. And this was at 11 a.m. So I'm thinking like, oh, dinner's in an hour. Mm-hmm. And like, I don't think, I got to eat before that. And I'm like, well, it's only an hour away. And she was so confused at what I was talking about. And that was the first time anyone had ever, I guess, called me out on it or wondered why I was saying it. But since then, I notice it all the time.
That's funny.
Yeah. It's funny when you get out of your region that you're used to.
Yes.
Interacting with people.
A lot of differences, even between the states. That's for sure.
Exactly.
Since you've been traveling a while, is there any items that, I know you're kind of a minimalist now, any items that you've purchased or apps that you've used to kind of help you with the travel journey, something that you've used pretty frequently that you quote unquote couldn't live without?
Well, I have my cooking supplies. Okay. That I use, and so I have a George Foreman, and I can grill anything on there, so that's pretty and then I have a couple pans, and I honestly can cook almost anything, just with those items. So I have just such a small set of kitchen supplies, but it actually works really well, and it kind of forces you to eat better too. So I used to love to bake, and now I just don't bake because it requires ingredients. So I guess it's a good thing in the long run.
Any specific, so just any pots or pans that you use, or is there a specific brand or anything that you go for?
Not really. I bought a pretty good, pair of pans.
Okay.
That work really well, and that's about it. Yeah, nothing specific.
Okay. Before we started recording, we were kind of talking about how you're just trying out rock wall climbing. Mm-hmm. Can you kind of go into, I know you're really active. Actually, when we were at that live event, the Smart Success PT event, we had played sand volleyball, and I absolutely suck at sand volleyball, but you do not. You're actually all about the volleyball. And somehow we're still friends after that, even though I think I might have cost the team a loss there.
It was all fun.
It was very fun. When you go to these new places, it sounds like you're pretty open to trying new things. Is there any routines that you go through at each spot, or do you kind of just go with the crowd and fit in and play the chameleon role?
Yeah, so I think I've developed a style that I do use, and basically that is like when I go to a new place, I do try to find the volleyball community, and usually it just takes finding one person and playing one time to kind of get in with them and figure out where things happen. And I've been really lucky with that. So usually I'll search on the internet for it and try to go to like some pickup events or things like that. So I've made a ton of friends through volleyball, and a lot of friends who I actually still stay in touch with and talk to quite frequently. And then I've also tried the CrossFit route as well. So I'll join a CrossFit gym, and then I usually can meet quite a few people that way. You meet people who have your same hobbies, and through that, I usually find people who maybe have some of the same other interests like I have, so like hiking, mountain biking, things like that. So I try that stuff quite frequently when I go to places. Sometimes it takes longer than usual, and it's hard to be patient. And if I don't find the people right away, I still try to go out on my own and do things, because I'd rather do that than just sit around.
Got it.
The more challenging parts of travel PT, trying to develop a social network wherever you're at, and to keep doing that every time you go somewhere new, it can be pretty challenging.
During those first couple of weeks when you do go to a new place, obviously you're still trying to find the people to hang out with and things like that. Is there anything that you do during those first 2 weeks to kind of, you said you're searching for groups, for volleyball groups and stuff, or do you tend to become a little more introverted with like reading books and things like that? What do you do during those first primary weeks when you're a little more secluded?
Yeah, I think during the first 2 weeks, it's a lot about just researching the area and figuring out what's available, trying to figure out what I'm going to pursue on my 13 weeks, because those 13 weeks go so incredibly fast. So, the first 2 weeks are spent doing that type of stuff. And once I figured out, what's around, then I start trying to figure out how I'm going to, get incorporated in, all of the community activities that I want to be in.
Got it. So Kelly, you mentioned the incident with the trailer and kind of losing a lot of your possessions. Is there any other kind of stories that you've had during your journey that might be considered kind of what I call horror stories? So like when I was looking into travel PT, I would ask a lot of the people around me, and what I was met with was all these like stories about, this is why you shouldn't do it because it puts you in jeopardy. You're in a really vulnerable position. Did you have any experiences like that? And then how did you or your company handle them?
I had problems with my fingerprinting for licensure. So in a lot of states, you have to get your fingerprints taken in order to be licensed in that state. And I applied for my license in a certain state about 8 weeks in advance. And on the website, it said it only would take like 3 to 4 weeks. So I thought, I was doing everything right. And then got closer to the time of that job starting, and my fingerprints still weren't back. And so I couldn't figure out what was going on. I kept asking about it. And finally, they told me that I had to get my fingerprints redone. And so they told me that they weren't good enough quality. So I got them done again, and once again, they weren't good enough quality. So they had to send my fingerprints in for an FBI background check. Well, that takes anywhere from, I think, a few days to weeks. And so I was just sitting in limbo waiting for my fingerprints to come back so I could start a job. So that's one of the most frustrating things. Probably I've actually had that happen in 2 states.
Wow.
Where, yeah, they've had to be sent to the FBI. And it's frustrating because I've had like 11 licenses. So after getting so many, you would think if you're licensed in a few states that you would, be able to easily get licensed in another state. And that's really not the case. So there is a compact that the Physical Therapy Association is working on to try to eliminate that type of stuff. So once you're licensed in one state, you will be able to practice in any state.
Yeah, when I was a student, I was a part of a advocacy committee, so we got very heavy into legislature and getting students aware of what was going on legally. And that was one of the big topics, was this compact licensure bill. And the best way I had it described to me was that when driver's licenses came out, there's two routes of government that you can go through. So you can either have a national rule at the top that okays everything, or you can have what they call a grassroots movement. So it starts from the bottom, and then it all kind of encompasses in itself. So when driver's licenses came about, all states passed a law that they were okay with, I'm from Missouri, we're okay with using Illinois license as a equal between the two states for driving. And then it kind of spread out from there. Different states were okay with each other. And so that's what they're hopefully trying to do with physical therapy. I know they have the minimum of 10 to sign on. So they're currently working on the legislature now, and hopefully in 2018, it's up and running. But they're hoping that after those 10, it starts popping up in other states, and it'll all just be, once you're licensed once, you're good.
Yeah.
Which would be amazing.
Yeah, it makes sense for it to be like that. I mean, it's just, it's ease for the clinicians, but also for patients too. Like when they talk about having a shortage of physical therapists, then, I don't think that the general population may understand, what's actually holding practitioners back from practicing and, providing care to everyone that needs it. And that's not just with physical therapists, but with all medical professionals. So I hope that there's other professions in the medical field that actually, start doing that as well.
Absolutely. So, Kelli, what is the next step for you? Do you plan on traveling for a while, or do you have some plans lined up for post-travel career?
Well, the post-travel career has definitely been on my mind lately a little bit more, but I still would like to go to Hawaii and Alaska. And after I go to those two places, I might be ready to settle down more and possibly start my own clinic. So I've been looking into that, but the travel PT is still pretty appealing right now. I love getting to take a little bit more time off between contracts and, just really getting to spend some good time with my family and even travel a little bit more between contracts as well. So it's pretty enticing still.
Yeah, the freedom that comes with it is hard to beat. During those times in between your rotations or your jobs, have you ever gone out of the country, or other than just going home, is there anything that you typically do during those weeks off?
Mm-hmm. I typically try to see my family. I have not went out of the country during those times. And I typically try to do, some sort of like small trip in the United States. Planning on going out of the country either this year or early next year, though. So I have some of that stuff planned, and I'm hoping to, jump on that pretty soon.
Woo! That'd be fun.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So, Kelli, you've been doing this for a while. You've seen a lot of different contracts. You're now on your 12th rotation. Could you go through some of the things that you look at, or some of the mistakes, or kind of lessons that you've learned during your process as a travel PT, what to look at during those initial and new contracts?
Yeah. So I think first and foremost, it's great to establish a good communication with a recruiter that understands you and that you mesh well with. And if you have that, then the process is going to be a lot easier. Now, when you're specifically looking at a job contract, something I always look at is, is there a certain hour guarantee? So typical, 40-hour work week is what all your stipends are based on and what your pay rate is based on. So a company can tell you that, hey, this is what you're going to get. But then if you don't actually work all those hours, you don't actually get all that. And so that can be disguised in a way. For example, in your contract, if your contract says 40 hours per week, you would assume that you'd be working 40 hours per week. But if the actual company you're working for doesn't have enough hours for you, then you won't get all those 40 hours. So something I always look for in my contract is for it to say 40 hours guaranteed or 36 hours guaranteed. So if you're guaranteed 36 hours, that means no matter what, how many ever hours you work, whether it's 5, 10, or 36, you're getting paid for all those 36 hours, which is really important when you're driving across the country to take a contract somewhere unknown. One of the other things that I look for is a cancellation notice. So in your contract, though, there will be like a 2-week or maybe like a 30-day cancellation notice. And basically that means that if you get to that contract and you are not happy or something goes wrong, that you can cancel in that amount of time. But it also goes the other way too. That company that you're working for can cancel your contract in that amount of time too. So those are some of the big things that I look for that, can really make or break your experience as a PT.
Got it. When you're going through that contract, I've heard usually you're kind of talking with your recruiter. So it's your communication with your recruiter, and the recruiter is kind of the middle person that also goes to the business. And so then I guess a cumulative, like between the three of you, this contract gets brought up and then you sign it. Is that correct?
Yes, that's exactly how it works. Okay. Yeah. The recruiter is the middleman. And then sometimes there's even someone who's like also in a medical staffing company that is another middleman too. So there's quite a few people that it's actually going through.
Okay. Have you ever negotiated a salary?
Do you mean for my contracts?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, almost every single time.
Okay. Can you walk us through the process of going through that initial contract offer with all the different people that we just talked about, and how you would negotiate your pay or anything else within that contract?
So if you are wanting to negotiate your pay, it's good to know, what a typical pay rate is in that area. And then I think it's also beneficial to work with a couple companies, which is what I normally do. I usually work with about 2 or 3. And a lot of times when I'm ready to take a job, I have a couple of offers on the table. And so when you have a couple of offers, it's pretty easy to say, well, this is what I'm getting in this one. Is there any way that you can match that if you feel comfortable asking that? And that has actually worked pretty well. One of the other things that you can run into is that multiple companies will present you with the same job. So let's say the same day they present you with the same job and you're not sure which company you want to go with. Well, you could ask, give me your best rate for this job, and I'm going to go with whoever gives me the best rate. And so that's also one way you can do it too. And that seems to work pretty well too.
Got it. You mentioned that you work between multiple recruiting companies. How do you deal with the issue of, I'm assuming you don't get their benefits, so their 401k packages, their health insurance is the one I'm specifically wanting to talk about. How do you get health insurance? Is it through that company you work with, or do you go out third party and just kind of get your own so that you have this ability and that freedom to work with multiple companies?
I've actually done both before. So I have taken the company's health insurance. I think one of the kickers is that some companies don't start your health insurance until the first day of a month. And so let's say that you start your job on like June 15th. Well, you wouldn't be covered until July 5th or July 1st.
Okay.
And another thing to look for is, well, when do they end your insurance? Because some companies end it on the very last day of your job, whereas other companies will end your insurance on the last day of the month. I've also went out on my own and got my own insurance plan too, and that seems to work pretty well. So you're covered between contracts. Got it.
Okay. Did you have anything else, kind of sticking with the nitty gritty of that negotiation process that you wanted to talk about, or a lesson that you've learned during that time?
One of the ways to maximize the amount of stipends you receive is to look at the gsa.gov website. And on that website, there are, like if you look at a specific city, they have stipends that you can receive per week on there. And so one of the stipends is a meal stipend, and the other stipend is a housing stipend. And so when you look on that website, it'll tell you what you can receive, and then you can look on your contract from the company you're going to work for, and they'll have an allotted amount for that. So the maximum amount you can receive is what's on gsa.gov. If you aren't getting the maximum amount on your contract, then that's something you can actually ask more for. And sometimes some companies will come through and give you that extra amount to match the website's amount.
Gotcha. Yeah, I briefly kind of looked into the gsa.gov website. And so stipends are something that the government allows you through your, you have your tax home in one area, mm-hmm. and then you're living in another area. So you have to show that you're duplicating expenses, but then the stipends for that area that you're staying in would allow you to have basically tax-free funds coming from the company that you're working with, the recruiting company.
Yes.
What I was surprised to find out is that when looking into this whole traveling thing, I know that your compensation is about 10 to 15% higher as a traveler than it would be as a stationary PT. What I didn't realize is that the hourly rates are kind of lower on the contracts that you do take. And it's actually the tax deductions or the stipends that you get that is actually what makes you paid a little bit more in the overall package of things. Did you have any comments on that?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
You're absolutely right. Trying to think here. So you are right with that, with the stipends and stuff making you a lot more money, but I would argue that you probably get paid more than 10 to 15% more.
Okay.
The tax-free stipends, while you are a traveler, you have to establish a tax home. So there are many definitions of what a tax home is, and it can be very confusing, but basically it's just a place of residence where you have your car tagged, you have your license, it's, your home. And you have to be duplicating expenses at your tax home as well as paying for expenses while you're on your travel assignment.
Coming out, there's a lot of myths of being a medical traveler. What are some of the myths that you've heard that you have found to be not true?
So I've been told that you get no mentorship, you get thrown into the wolves. This can definitely all hold true, but believe me, I've had some interviews where I was thinking there's no way in heck that I would go work at that specific place. But I've also worked at some very amazing places with amazing clinicians who have been very good mentors. And, every place you go, you have the opportunity of being mentored by someone different who has different training than you. And, they can all, add to your own toolbox. So I think that, people will say that you get no mentorship and you might not get that steady mentorship. But if you seek out other clinicians and you ask them questions, I realize that they're more than happy to help you along the way.
I agree with that. And that's something that I've heard, that you kind of get thrown into these situations where you don't know what's going on. And then you're basically taken advantage of. But from most of the people that I've talked to, in fact, all people I've talked to, that's not the case. And I would actually argue that with the experience that you gain with multiple interviews, when you decide to take that permanent position, you're going to be able to handle that much better. I don't think there's any more or less risk of you going into an interview with a travel company versus just a typical standard local hometown PT clinic. I know I've been lucky that at my first starting place with my friend, I've gotten a lot of good mentorship through him, but I have heard through some other avenues that maybe you get thrown into these PT clinics that just kind of pump out patients, and they're not getting the mentorship that they were hoping to get straight out of school.
Yeah, I've heard the same from some of my classmates too, that the company, promised them some sort of mentorship, but that mentorship was never defined. And then they didn't really get what they were expecting out of it. And I've actually had travel PT jobs where I've had almost like a full caseload on the first day. But I've also had jobs where I've had almost 2 weeks of orientation, where I've followed a PT. And that's really been a great experience, especially to be out of school for a while and then, have to follow a PT. I mean, yeah, it's really, really awesome. And I love to see how people do it differently, just, in different areas of the United States.
Absolutely. And I think something you hit on was that the fact that it was defined. So, that formal mentorship is what you would love to have as a new grad. But I think it is something that's a lot of people get enticed with it. Oh, you're going to be taken care of here. There's going to be a mentorship, but it's never defined, as you said. And it kind of just falls to the wayside, or maybe they, hit on it, the first 3 weeks. And then after that, it's it just falls through the cracks.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard of that happening very often. It's too bad that is what happens. But I think that a lot of times people who say that travel isn't a good idea aren't exactly people that have done it before. So I believe that people that have done it will actually recommend it more so than other people will.
I would 100% agree with that. Pretty much everybody, all the naysayers, I'll call them out, they had never done a travel position. And everybody who I've talked to who has is like 100% yes, worth it, do it, for it.
Yeah, you definitely get a lot of pushback. I mean, overall, just with travel PT, because a lot of people just don't know about it to begin with. And the people that do know about it seem to have heard a lot of negative things about it. So it can be hard, like jumping into it as a new grad when you don't know a whole lot. And you're, intaking all this information from so many different people about what you should do. So it's a little bit hard to make the jump when everyone's telling you not to do it.
Absolutely. So going into somebody who's maybe on that fence of wanting to take the jump, but not sure if it's something they should do, what would you kind of say to encourage that person to follow and fall into the medical traveling career?
I say if it's something that you're curious about and that you would be passionate about, then go for it. I mean, it's only 13 weeks. Usually 13 weeks is like the minimum for a contract. And if you absolutely hate it, you can always get out of it and go back home. But there's a very good chance that you may love it and want to do more. It seems to be somewhat addicting as you do. And I truly believe that traveling is just, what you make of it. So I've seen people that love doing it, but I've also heard people that from people that have been miserable doing it. So, knowing your purpose, why you're doing it, what you want to get out of it will, be the best thing that you can do for yourself as you plan to travel. And I think it's just so much better to, look back and say, I can't believe I did that, rather than just wondering what if.
That was good.
Thanks.
That is something you mentioned, like different clinical styles, treatment styles between the states. That's even something that I've noticed between just my clinicals. So I had a few in Missouri, one at Birmingham, and then went to Evansville, Indiana. And at the place I was in Indiana, they used a lot of manual techniques, manipulations, just a lot of hands-on stuff that would generally in Missouri be considered like post-grad skills. But in Indiana, it was entry-level skills. So they were actually teaching it within the school there. And that was something that was kind of contrasted between the two states, even though that they're pretty close within the Midwest.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know that a lot of the state laws dictate what we can and can't do too. And so I've seen some states that, won't allow you to do certain manipulations, where other states, you're learning it in school and you're practicing it in school, and you come out as a new grad and you can do that type of stuff. So another one is the dry needling.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of states that don't allow that yet either.
Yeah, they were also pretty big on that in Indiana, or at least the clinic I was at. My clinic instructor used it a lot.
Nice. Did you get to do it?
I had it tried on me.
I was always the guinea pig when they were gonna do a presentation. Yeah, it was kind of fun.
They actually, not only did they put the needles within the muscle, but they connected it to an e-stim machine, and so I was actually getting muscle contractions with it. I don't think there's any parameters set on that yet, but we were just kind of playing around one day in the clinic.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. And who are they trained by? Do you know?
I don't. I'm sure they told me, but they worked within what I wouldn't call it a big corporate chain, but it was definitely like an area of multiple clinics, and they would have people come in and teach all of the employees there something that the company wanted them to learn. And so they all got the same training through that organization or that body.
Oh, okay. Very nice. That's cool that you get to see that on your clinical.
Oh, yeah.
Get exposed to it.
The nice thing about wanting to get out of the area as a student is that most other people in my school didn't. So I got a lot of my first picks. And so that was good. How many roommates do you have right now?
Oh, up until yesterday I had 2, and now I have 4.
That sounds like one of the clinicals I was on. So my first clinical ever was at a house. We had 4 permanent persons, me, 2 classmates, and 1 other girl. But I swear, every night we had a different 1 person or 2 persons staying on the couch. So it was just a full house every time. You'd come back in from your clinical just wanting to go back and shower, and there'd be people in the living room that you'd never seen before, and you're just like, hey. Or, I would be in the kitchen cooking, usually just in shorts because I hate wearing shirts. And they would walk in. It's like, oh, dang it. Well, we're here now. It's going to stay off.
Well, this is what you get. Take it or leave it.
That was an interesting 5 weeks.
I bet. Yeah, I was kind of hesitant about my place, but it was a quarter of what I was paying at the other place, so it made sense to move. It was so expensive where I was at before. So.
Mm-hmm. How has so you've had roommates before? How has that worked out for you? So for me, I've never had any issues. I've always kind of stayed with different people. I've stayed with people that I've never met before when I started living with them. I've never had a bad experience yet. Have you had any bad experiences, or is there a way that you kind of feel people out before you move in with them if this is going to be a right fit?
Yeah. So I normally don't live with other people. A lot of times I'm just in a 1-bedroom apartment. I have lived with a couple of friends who I knew, before I moved in with them. So that has been great. This is really the first time on this contract that I've lived with other people that I didn't know before. And I actually met them before. And so it seemed like a good situation. The landlord, his goal is to get people in the house that are professionals who are pursuing something that is, maybe short term, and, just to keep the house that way rather than have it be a college house, which it has been previously.
Got it. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, because I've had people tell me, oh, it's different if you're a guy versus a girl, but I usually don't like to believe those gender roles. So I think it might be more personality thing than a gender thing, but I didn't have the heart to call him out on
that. I think, yeah. Especially when everyone's working and professional. I think it's different when you're in college. And,
that's true.
I mean, no girl wants to live. What's that?
That's true. I would agree with that.
No girl wants to live in like some guy's college house. Yeah, where there's things hung all
over. So I guess my last question here, is there any books or podcasts or people that you follow that kind of, it can be traveling related or it can be volleyball related, just something that you've been interested in?
So I read a book within the last year called Make the Big Time Where You Are. And it's just a motivational book written by a collegiate football coach. And, just talking about like, where's the big time? What is the big time? And it really actually fits in very well with traveling. So I like that as my motto as I travel.
Very cool.
I'd say as far as people I follow Pavel Tosteling quite a bit. He's a strength and conditioning coach, and he's trained like the skills, and he's educated in sports science, and I've learned a lot from him about the kettlebell techniques and just strength and conditioning in general. Yeah,
I liked his what he called it something. It's like when you start picking up a kettlebell, there's an effect, and it's called the what the fuck effect. And you start doing it, and all of a sudden, all your other lifts start getting stronger. But yeah, I've seen that, and I know he's big on grip strength and just all those fun PT scapular mechanics.
Yeah, exactly. I really enjoy his stuff. He has a lot of good books out, and then a lot of good stuff on the internet. And then he's the founder of Strong First, so it's like a certification where you have to pass a written test and you have to pass a teaching test. And then you also have to actually pass the test where you have to do certain lifts. So
that's cool.
I think there's a pretty high from what I've heard, but hopefully I'll do it soon.
Yeah, record it and we'll put it on the website. I want to see you do some big deadlifts.
All right. Yeah, I know the criteria for it. I think I can, the barbell stuff I can pass, but some of the kettlebell stuff I have to practice more.
Got it.
In the body weight class, you have to do a 1-arm push-up. So.
Is that the one you're working on?
That.
Very cool. It's interesting kind of looking at books, and also really the first time I noticed it was like music. You can take a lot of the same books or songs, and depending on what scope you look at it through, it can apply very well. So kind of what you were saying with your book there is that it actually relates pretty well to travel. And I would say that there are multiple books out there that would kind of fall into that.
Yeah, I definitely love those type of books when you can relate it to where you're at in life, but you can also use it to, maybe look back on experiences you've had when you're thinking about doing something in the future. It just can be very relatable to all of that.
Very, very true. Well, it was a little light when we started. It's officially nighttime now, so we can kick it off with some smooth jazz. One of those late night talk show hosts.
No, I told my roommate they had to wait to start the party till late. The podcast.
Turn up.
Monday night party.
Is there anything else that you wanted to tell the listeners for those, just getting started or even experienced travelers?
I just believe that, travel is something that is outside everyone's comfort zone. And if you have a desire to do it, I would say, go for it. It's just, it's short term. I think you'll find that not only can you grow as a PT, but you grow as a person by experiencing different cultures, meeting new people in different places. You learn about things that you never knew existed. And, the opportunities that Travel PT has given me are, what I'll cherish forever. And I'm so thankful for everyone I've met along the way. It's unbelievable to me how supportive those people are, and how they've stayed in my life. And I even have a couple of my best friends who I met through Travel PT, because I had to get outside of my comfort zone, try to figure out what are my real hobbies, and it's just been a very rewarding experience. So if you're on the ropes, I say go for it.
Well, thank you very much. And if you are listening to the show right now, either watching us on YouTube or listening to us in your car, if you have any questions for Dr. Kelli Berg, just join the New Medical Nomads Facebook group, and you can tag her in a question. I'm sure she will be more than welcome to reach out to you and make contact.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to answer any questions. Thanks for having me on the show.
No problem.
Yeah, she has a van. She lives out of her van.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you plan on doing that in Alaska?
Living out of my van?
Mm-hmm.
Probably not.
Actually, one of
I was actually thinking about. Go ahead.
Sorry, there's a lag. One of the girls, the grade below us, just came back from Alaska. They had a clinical there, and God, that made me jealous hard.
Like, get your license there. There's a lot of jobs there.
Is there?
Well, I shouldn't say a lot. It's not like California, but there's a decent amount.
Yeah.
If you were to hold out and just kind of like wait around for one to come around and you didn't care what setting it was in, then you could probably go.
Got it.
Within a month or two. I've actually been offered a couple jobs there and I haven't taken them, because one was from like September to May, and I'm like, well, those are like the worst months to be in Alaska, so no.
No sunlight, just cold and dark.
Yeah. I was like,
yeah, it's definitely a different culture from what I've heard. Like, she had to go house sitting, and so she was told that she has to dog sit. Well, she showed up, and one of the dogs was actually a pig. Like, and not a pig either. It was a massive pig.
Oh my gosh.
Pig, or what is called Puddles. His name was Puddles. Puddles the pig. And so she had to house sit this pig and these dogs. And then included in the little note that she had, it was, if a burglar comes in, you're held at gunpoint, or a bear walks in, this is the code you need to hit the alarm in order to call the cops. I was like, the fact that, first of all, like, the fact that those both are on the list, like, as in, like, equally likable to happen, is a little concerning.
What part of Alaska is this in?
I think it was around Anchorage. It was Anchorage, yeah.
Oh, okay.